Welcome back to Andersen Acres. We are inside today talking again about rabbit color genetics. And today we're here with Gemini, and she's going to help us talk about some absolute rules for breeding your rabbits. So these are genetic rules. They don't care if you don't like them. This is absolute science. You cross certain things, you're going to get certain things. And it doesn't matter if you would rather get something else, or if you don't want to believe that crossing two solids will only get you a solid. It doesn't matter. This is one of those things where there are some hard and fast genetic rules. So, what are a few of these genetic rules? One of them is there are only two colors of rabbit. Okay? There are black rabbits and there are chocolate rabbits or brown. So Gemini here is black, despite the fact that she has brown around her ears and some white on her nose and face, and that she has a brown and cream underbelly. She is still a black rabbit. Genetically, she is black. Okay? Genetically, our Rex outside Stump is brown. She's a chocolate otter, so she has all these markings like Gemini. She's got all these brown markings and the cream on her tummy and stuff like that. But ultimately, she is brown. Those are the only two colors. There's a lot of variation, so you can have a lot of different genes that act on those colors, but you are either black or brown. That's it. You have no other color. You can have variations, you can have different expressions of that color, but you're either black or brown. That's it. So further to that, breeding a brown rabbit, a chocolate, to a brown rabbit, another chocolate, will always get you brown rabbits. Always. There are no other options. Brown plus brown equals brown. Okay? That's it. Because, I can tell you exactly why. Brown is recessive to black. So a rabbit that has both a black gene and a brown gene will be black. A rabbit that is brown has only brown genes. It can't be anything else. So if you breed two browns, you get a brown. So if you want black rabbits, don't start with browns. Okay, you will never get a black rabbit out of those browns. Okay. Next up, solids. So she is a tan, an otter. In Holland Lops we call it otters, but some breeds simply call it tan. It is represented by the AT. It's in the agouti series, the series that determines whether or not they're a solid colored rabbit, an agouti, or an otter like she is. So in that A series, solids, the ones that have totally colored tummies, so like our deli, she is a solid black. Solids are the most recessive. If you breed a solid to a solid, you get a solid. You can never get an agouti or a tan, an otter like Gemini here, from solids. Okay? Not going to happen. It cannot happen. These are entirely recessive genes requiring two copies to show up. So always, always and forever, solid plus solid gets you a solid. So even if one of those solids is black and the other solid is brown, you still end up with a solid. Okay, you might end up with either a black or a brown solid depending on the genes of the black rabbit, but it's still going to be a solid, no matter what color it is. So the next rule is dilute to dilute equals dilute, always. Doesn't matter whether you are a dilute black, which is blue, or a dilute chocolate, which is lilac. You will be a dilute rabbit. So if I breed my Capricorn, who is a dilute, he's a blue, well he's a broken blue, but if I breed him to my Libra, who's also a blue, they can only have dilute babies. They cannot throw a black baby. However, if I breed Gemini to Capricorn, he has two dilute genes, but she only has one. So about half of their babies are dilute and about half of their babies are not. So about half of their babies will express the black, about half of their babies will express the blue. They don't have any chocolate. I don't have chocolate in my Holland lock lines. So that is a hard and fast rule. You absolutely 100% are only going to get dilutes from Dilute. So if you want a black rabbit, not a blue, don't get blues, because they do not carry the black, the intense gene. The intense color gene, the black, or the chocolate, if you're a chocolate rabbit, that intense color is dominant. So if you don't see it, it's not there. So if you want the intense dark colors, don't get dilutes, okay? The next rule is a tort plus a tort equals a tort. Now that's because the tort is from the extension series, the E series. The E series covers how color moves around the body. So you can have harlequins, because that pushes the color around the body. You can have torts, because that pushes the color somewhere else. But in that series, in that E series, tort falls at the bottom. It is the most recessive. In order to be a tort, you have to have 2 copies of the tort gene. So if you breed 2 rabbits who are torts, all of their babies will be torts. They might be different colors of torts depending on the genetics of the parents, but they will always be torts because that's all they have. Next up, broken. If you do not see a broken color, okay, if there's no broken present, you can't get a broken from that rabbit. So Gemini is not broken, okay? She is unbroken, meaning she's a solid color. I know she's not solid, but when we're talking about the broken series, we usually use the term broken and solid, even though it's incorrect because solid is actually from the A series and broken is EN. But we tend to say solid. It's actually unbroken. The correct terms are broken and unbroken. So she is unbroken. So sometimes we say solid. That's incorrect. But we say it anyway. We say lots of things that are incorrect. But she is unbroken. No white. The broken is the white markings that break up the color. That's why we call it broken. You're a good girl. I love you. So she's not broken, but my Capricorn and my Libra and my Celeste and my new Tinsley are all broken. Some of them are Charlies, which means lots of white, not just a little bit. So she's not broken. And broken is a dominant gene. So if you have 2 rabbits that are unbroken, you are never going to get a broken out of them. So if you want broken in your herd, you have to start with brokens because they're the only source of broken. It's so dominant. She does not have a broken gene. But when I breed her to Capricorn, some of their babies, about half, are broken. Not all of them. Some of them are solid, or unbroken is the correct term. But because she does not throw a broken gene at all. Okay, there is no broken gene in her genes at all. So she can't throw a broken. He throws 1 broken, or because he's not a Charlie, he does actually have an unbroken gene. So he can throw either or. So they get about 50% broken out of their litters. So, staying with the brokens, Charlies, which are mostly white with some broken markings. So some of the blue or black or chocolate markings. Okay, that's what a Charlie is. It has mostly white. So, 2 Charlies together will always result in a litter that is either entirely Charlie or some Charlie and some regular broken, depending on how it comes out of the parents. Okay? But they might kind of look like they're a little bit, they'll always be Charlies, but the way Charlie expresses, sometimes you're not 100% sure it's a Charlie because nobody's counting the hairs, right? Charlie is less than 50% color, but nobody's counting the hairs. So a Charlie to a Charlie results in all broken, and they're actually all Charlies. It can be hard to tell. So genetically, they will be all Charlies because there's nothing except the broken gene, because a Charlie is 2 copies of the broken gene. That's why it expresses so strongly. but sometimes it expresses so close to 50% that you can't tell by looking, and nobody's sitting there counting 1 white hair, 2 white hair. We're not doing that. So sometimes a Charlie doesn't necessarily look like a Charlie, but they are. If you bred 2 Charlies, so if I were to breed Celeste to a Charlie male, I don't have a Charlie male, but if I were, all of those babies would be Charlie, even if they don't necessarily look it, okay? If, however, you breed a broken to a Charlie, so when I bred Celeste, and she's got a couple of babies now, to my Capricorn, so he is a standard broken, meaning he has more than 50% color, still a significant amount of white, but he's not a Charlie. Celeste is a Charlie, okay? So Celeste, bred to Capricorn, gives me all Charlies and all brokens. So some of them will have, because Capricorn can throw a unbroken gene, one unbroken gene, some of them will be regular brokens, just your standard broken, and the rest will be Charlies. It'll be about 50-50. So when you're breeding brokens together, if you breed 2 standard brokens, you can get a solid because they have 1 copy of the solid and 1 copy of the broken. Okay, so you can get an unbroken rabbit out of that, but if they're both Charlies, you can't. So Charlie to Charlie, all broken, and if you breed no brokens at all, so unbroken to unbroken, so Gemini to another unbroken rabbit, no brokens. Broken is dominant. Last up, 2 more points here that are kind of hand in hand. A red-eyed white plus a red-eyed white equals a red-eyed white. Always. So red-eye, red-eye, red-eyed white. Always. Because the red-eyed white gene comes from the C series, and it requires 2 little C's, okay? The furthest down the line, the most recessive, are those 2 little C's. If you get a little C from mama and a little C from papa, you're a red-eyed white. If you breed that to another red-eyed white, all they can give each other is red-eyed whites. The blue-eyed whites, if you cross a blue-eyed white to a blue-eyed white, you get blue-eyed whites. And that's because blue-eyed whites are the Vienna gene, like Gemini carries. She has beautiful blue eyes. Okay, absolutely gorgeous blue eyes. Gorgeous girl. And because the Vienna gene is entirely recessive, so that blue eyes that she has is a recessive gene, sort of, okay, it can show up. So she is Vienna marked, meaning she has 1 Vienna, 1 non-Vienna. And it's recessive in the sense that in order to get blue-eyed whites, you need 2 copies of it. But it can still express in a limited fashion. So she has like a white marking on her forehead, a white marking on her nose, and she's got the blue eyes. So she's expressing the Vienna a little bit. But for full expression of Vienna, it is recessive. So you need 2 copies. You need 1 from mama, 1 from papa. That's why if I breed Gemini to Capricorn, who also carries a Vienna, I can get blue-eyed whites. If you breed a blue-eyed white to a blue-eyed white, you get blue-eyed white because the only thing they can pass down is that Vienna gene. However, if you mix a red-eyed white and a blue-eyed white, that's whiskey squeaking a toy. But if you mix a blue-eyed white with a red-eyed white, you're not going to get white. Well, you could, depending on the genetics, but probably not. Because blue eyes and red eyes are 2 separate parts of the genetic code. The gene for the blue-eyed rabbits does not live in the same place as the gene for the red-eyed rabbits. Okay? They're separate on the genetic code. So because they're separate, just crossing white rabbits doesn't necessarily give you white rabbits. Red-eyed white plus red-eyed white always equals red-eyed white. Blue-eyed plus blue-eyed always equals blue-eyed white. Always. But check the eye color. When you're buying a white rabbit, check that eye color. Because if it's got red eyes, it doesn't have the Vienna. Okay, at least it's not double Vienna. We will talk about what happens when you mix a red-eyed and a blue-eyed white in a different video, because it is possible that a red-eyed white is also Vienna. Okay, it is possible. It's annoying. So, because red-eyed white is the great eraser, So is it possible? Sure, it's absolutely possible. It's not common. But if you mix a blue-eyed white with a red-eyed white, you're not guaranteed to get all white rabbits. In fact, you're unlikely to get all white rabbits. You will likely discover what genes those rabbits have. So the blue-eyed white is the great cover. It covers everything else, and the red-eyed white erases everything else. But if you remove those two recessive genes, even if you just remove one copy, you're going to start exposing everything else that those rabbits have. So if you cross a blue-eyed white with a red-eyed white, you're going to get something you didn't expect because you actually had no idea what those genes were hiding. But those are some of the hard and fast rules for breeding your rabbits. Remember, if you want brokens, you got to start with brokens. If you want solids, you got to start with solids. And there are only 2 colors of rabbit. That is about it for us here today at Andersen Acres. We'll see you tomorrow.